So you came to Canada chasing the dream of PR. You studied hard, you worked, you paid your taxes, and now you're scared that your PR may never happen. And you're probably right. If you're choosing the wrong PR pathway, it will never happen for you. I've seen this fear and this confusion in hundreds of students in Canada, but there's good news. There are 13 real PR pathways, and one of them might be right for you. So, in this video, I'm going to walk you through the 5 proven PR options, plus bonus 8 programs that most people are not aware of or they don't talk about it. So, before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Dil Sandhu. I'm a licensed immigration consultant based out of Ontario, Canada. And without any further ado, let's dive right into today's topic. So, the topic is top 5 Canadian PR options after a 2-year diploma that most students miss, plus a bonus 8 PR programs. For the top 5 programs, I will be talking about their eligibility, what are the positives about these programs, what are the negatives, and which might suit you according to your requirements. Now, let's talk about why express entry might not be a good option for you, or may not be even an option for you. A lot of students who come to Canada come after grade 12, they do a 2-year diploma, and then they get their postgraduate work permit for 3 years and they start working in Canada. Now, under express entry, even if you have 1 year of Canadian experience and you qualify under the Canadian experience class, even if you were to maximize your language score in English, your scores might hover between 400 to 450, give or take. That may not be the enough score to qualify to get the invitation under the Canadian experience class based on the recent trends, what we have seen. Since 2024, the scores for Canadian experience class have been more than 500 out of 1200. And you may not have any chance under the Canadian experience class, except I would say the only one is the French language proficiency category. Under this, the chances are quite high because French helps in 2 ways. One, it gives you extra CRS score points. And secondly, the cutoff for French is much lower. And even if I may add, the French quota is probably going to increase every single year. So, which is a good news. If you can master or fluent in French, then you don't have to look at any other option for yourself. But if not, then what I'm going to talk about in the next few slides will be very much important for you. So now the first one is Nova Scotia Skilled Worker Stream, a really amazingly good program. The eligibility requirements are pretty low. What you need is a full-time job offer from an eligible Nova Scotia employer who has been active in the business for at least 2 years. You need 1 year of experience related to the job, and you need to be between 21 and 52 years old. And you need to have the skills, training, and accreditation, if applicable, for the job, right? And if you see, there are many positives in this specific program. First, there is no application fee. Probably this is the only program where there is no application fee, and the language requirements are pretty low. It's CLB4 or CLB5. So, for example, CLB4 translate to approximately, if you ask me, around 4.5 in listening, 3.5 in reading, 4 in writing, and 4 in speaking, if it's the IELTS general training. And CLB4 is required if your job offer is in tier 4 or 5. If your job offer is in tier 0, 1, 2, or 3, then you require CLB5. And even the requirement for that is not pretty high. So CLB5 translate to IELTS, it would be listening 5, reading 4, writing 5, speaking 5. And the good part about the work experience is that you just need 1 year of related work experience in the past 5 years. And that experience could also be while you were a student, as long as you were paid and you were authorized to work, right? And it's open to all tiers, tier 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But there's one limitation in tier 5. If you are on a postgraduate work permit, then you cannot have a job offer in tier 5, right? But that doesn't stop you if you are, let's say, married, and if your spouse is on open work permit and she works in, or he or works in tier 5, then it could work as well. The employer requirements are pretty low as well. So really, really good stream. Now let's look at some of the negatives or some of the cons of this specific stream. So one of them is that recently, because of the lowering of the quotas, so there is a limited occupation priorities. So in the way, uh, they are not accepting application in accommodation and food services industry, and they're actually prioritizing sectors like, healthcare, social assistance, construction, and the like. And obviously, a job offer is required. And I already mentioned that the postgraduate work permit, there is a limitation for tier 5 kind of jobs. And most of the jobs you might find may not be in very large cities like Halifax, but it might be in a rural or smaller communities where there might be more need for people in the construction and healthcare sector. So these are some of the negatives for this program, but overall it's amazingly good program. So the second really good program is also in Nova Scotia. It's called as Nova Scotia Critical Construction Worker Pilot. So in this program, you need a full-time permanent job offer from a Nova Scotia employer in the construction sector. So that is defined by NAICS 23, which is basically a North American industry classification system, right? And they have listed many jobs in the construction industry in, like, from, for example, construction managers, um, electricians, carpenters, roofers and shinglers, even material handlers and other trade helpers and laborers. So again, you need 1 year of work experience related to the job. You either need to have a high school diploma or you have a proof that you have completed a construction specific industry training. Again, the requirements for language are pretty low, which is CLB 5 if your job is in tier 0, 1, 2, 3, and CLB 4, which if your job is in tier 4 and 5. Again, the age is between 21 to 55. Only those are eligible. And if you see the positives, again, there's no application fee. And if I may add, in case of Nova Scotia, they don't even have an expression of interest system. So you directly submit your application as long as you meet the requirements. So low language requirements, flexible work experience, even 1 year work experience related to the job can also be while you were a student, from inside, from outside Canada. So all experiences counts. So it's open to most occupations in the construction sector and accepts job offer under tier 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So lower employment requirement as compared to OINP. For example, in Ontario, you need to have a 3 year active business. There is a need for $1 million of revenue if the job offer is in GTA and things like that. None of that are there in this specific stream. The employer has to be active 2 year for the last 2 years, and they have to provide you with the employer form and things like that, some documents, and offer you a permanent full-time job offer. So what are some of the not so positive things? So one is that the job offer has to be in the construction sector. So you cannot say, oh, I'm working as a material handler in Amazon and I would be eligible. No, because Amazon doesn't work in the construction sector. So it has to be in the construction sector. Secondly, of course, there are regional limitations as well. So the opportunities are generally concentrated in rural and smaller communities, and you might have to think about that as well. The next one is New Brunswick Skilled Worker Stream. Under this, there are three subcategories. The one we are talking about is the New Brunswick Experience. This is for those who have at least 6 months of full-time work experience. They must have been living in New Brunswick for the past 6 months, and they have to meet the education level which meets the requirements of the position as per the NOC description. And they need to have a language requirement of CLB level 4, and they must be 19 years of age. So what are the positives? One of the positive is it's only 6 months of full-time experience with a sporting employer, not like 2 years, 1 year experience in most of the other streams. Education requirement is based on the job offer position. If that requires a grade 12, then that's what you require, bare minimum. If it requires a diploma, then you should have a diploma. And the CLB4 is great for applicants with basic English and or French proficiency, one of the official languages. And this is true for even the previous streams like Nova Scotia uh, skilled worker or Nova Scotia critical construction worker pilot. So whenever we are talking about CLB in Canada, whether it could be in both in English or French, right? This stream is open to most occupations, except job offer in tier 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. There are lower employer requirements similar to, let's say, Nova Scotia. The employer must be active 2 year in business, and the employer has to support your application. They have their specific form which needs to be filled and attached with the application and also with the expression of interest. Now let's look into some of the negatives. The first one is that they actually have an active list. So these are the occupations which they are not considering right now. There are many such occupations such as administrative assistants, food service supervisors, cooks, bakers, bartenders, front desk clerks, laborers in food and beverage processing, laborers in fish and seafood, food and beverage servers, food counter attendants, and many more. Another important thing is right now they're also prioritizing certain sectors such as healthcare, education, and social community sectors, and construction. Third is that it is an expression of interest system. There's no direct application. First, you create a profile. If you're invited, then you submit the application. And it's a job offer stream, right? So the job offer from an eligible employer is required, and there's a fee involved. Unlike Nova Scotia PNP, this has a non-refundable fee of $250, which you need to be submitting after you get the invitation to submit application. Let's talk about Atlantic Immigration Program. What is the eligibility requirement? First is that you need a qualifying work experience unless you're exempted. So the exemption is for international graduates of a recognized post-secondary institution in Atlantic Canada. And the work experience required is that you must have at least 1 year of work experience in the last 5 years from Canada or outside Canada. And then let's look into the education requirement. If your job offer is in tier 0 or 1, then you need at least 1 year of post-secondary study. And if your job offer is in tier 2, 3, or 4, then you need a high school diploma. Similarly, for language requirements, if your job offer is in tier 0, 1, 2, or 3, then the requirement for language is CLB level 5, either in English or French. If it's tier 4, then it's CLB 4. Now, very important related to the job offer. You need a job offer from a designated employer. So that is one of the main eligibility requirement. But the work experience requirement depends upon the job offer, right? If your job is in tier 0, then the work experience can be in tier 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Whatever the tier your job offer is, the work experience go all the way till tier 4. Now let's look at some of the positives. The most important positive is it's a federal program and the job offer can be in tier 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And that 1 year of work experience can be from Canada, from outside Canada, and even experience while you were a student with authorization counts as long as paid experience. Low language requirements, no settlement funds required if you're living and working on a valid work permit in Canada, and no work experience required for certain international students who completed study in the province. And Atlantic here means that all the provinces which are called Atlantic provinces: New Brunswick, Newfoundland and Labrador, Prince Edward Islands, and Nova Scotia. Now let's look at some of the negatives. First is the mandatory job offer from a designated employer. Now, this job offer cannot be from any employer. So they have on their website, every province have their own designated employer list. The job offer must be from a designated employer. And it's limited to Atlantic provinces, right? And they have a limited quota. And because of that, the processing times have increased recently. And it's not that every province has its own criteria for endorsement, right? So the way it works is some provinces say, oh, for example, Nova Scotia might say that I would not endorse any application for food service supervisor. So similarly, every province can set up their conditions whom they want to endorse. So that is obviously a challenge in this specific stream. Now let's look into the rural community immigration pilot. Now, what is the eligibility criteria? One of them is that you must have a valid job offer from a designated employer in the community. So there are many communities in Canada who are participating in this, and you must have a valid job offer from a designated employer. And how do you find a designated employer? It's generally on their website. They have a list of employers who are designated. You must have at least 1 year of related work experience in the past 3 years. And then there are requirements also related to your language. So it could be either English or French. It depends upon your job offer. If the job offer is in tier 01, then the requirement is CLB 6. If it is in 2 or 3, then the requirement is CLB 5. It's 4 or 5, the requirement is CLB 4. And there is also education requirement. The education requirements are pretty low. All they're looking for is a high school diploma, or its equivalent if it's outside Canada, right? And now let's look at some of the positives. First, you see that in this specific stream, all tiers are eligible, like from tier 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There are low language requirements, low education requirements, and no settlement funds are required if you're living and working on a valid work permit in Canada. And even certain international students who have completed their study in the community, maybe a 2 year diploma or a master's, they might be exempted, right? So the more details are on the website, and you can check that. And now let's look into the negatives. Now, the one of the negatives is that each community has come up with 5 priority sectors and approximately 25 priority occupations. So it must be one of those occupations. So anything other than that would not be considered. And the quotas are pretty small, so every community would not have a very high quota. So just make sure that if you are applying and going into those communities, you apply and you have a good profile. And the third thing is it's a point-based system. So the way it works is that every community has a point system, and you need at least 50 points. Higher the better. So higher would be, higher points will improve your chances, right? And you need a job offer from a designated employer. So these are some of the negatives for this specific program. Now let's talk about the bonus programs. First one is Nova Scotia International Graduates in Demand stream. So this stream is currently open in the following job categories. One is paramedical occupations, pharmacy technician, nurse aide, orderlies, and patient service associates, early childhood educators and assistants. This requires the person to complete a program of study from an eligible Nova Scotia designated learning institution within the last 3 years before the application. And of course, this requires a full-time job offer from a Nova Scotia employer in the job category we discussed earlier, which is paramedical, occupation pharmacy, nurse aide, ECE, or ECA. So this is a brief about this specific stream. So it's an amazingly good stream if you have done a diploma, degree, certificate, depending upon the program, right? For example, if it's for a paramedical or pharmacy, you must have done a diploma. If it is nurse aides, orderlies, you could have done a certificate, diploma, or degree. And if it is early childhood educator assistant, you must have done a diploma and a degree. So that's a brief about this specific stream. The next one is Nova Scotia Occupations in Demand. So this is if you have a permanent full-time job offer from a Nova Scotia employer, either in 33102, which is nurse aides, light duty cleaners, transport truck drivers, heavy equipment operators, construction trade helpers, and laborers. So these are the 5 occupations right now. And you must have 1 year of work experience related to the job and high school diploma. The language requirements are pretty low, just CLB level 4. And one thing important right now is that uh, if you are working in the accommodation and food service sector, so then they will not accept that application. So this is a brief about the occupation in demand stream, which is a pretty good stream in Nova Scotia. So the another one is the New Brunswick skilled worker graduate stream. So this is a subcategory of the New Brunswick skilled worker. So the main requirement here is that you must have done a eligible postgraduate work permit eligible program from a DLI in New Brunswick, and you must have a full-time non-seasonal job offer from an eligible employer who is ready to support your application, or you may have accepted an offer for such a position. The good part is that no work experience required. You must be 19 years of age, and the language requirements are also pretty low, which is just CLB level 4. And if your job falls in tier 0, 1, 2, or 3, you don't even need that as long as you have studied in English or French in the New Brunswick DLI Institute where you completed your study. Now let's talk about the Newfoundland and Labrador International Graduate category. So this stream actually is a great stream if you have graduated from Memorial University or College of North Atlantic, because in that case, your job offer is required, but the job offer doesn't have to be related to the field of study as long as you can prove that you can do the work and you have the required qualification to do the work. And the job offer can be in tier 0, 1, 2, or 3, or certain in-demand tier 4 occupations. And main requirement in this stream is that you must be on a postgraduate work permit and you must have at least 4 months of validity remaining at the time of application. Again, this is a job offer stream, but one very important thing is for out of province graduates. So they must have graduated from a public institution outside Newfoundland and Labrador and must have a job or offer directly related to the field of study. And they must work in Newfoundland for at least 1 year before applying to the PNP. So the criteria is much more stringent for out of province graduates. As far as the inside province, those who have graduated from Memorial or the College of North Atlantic, the process is pretty streamlined and very easy. Another really good one is the Newfoundland and Labrador skilled worker stream. So again, you must have a full-time job offer from an employer, eligible employer in Newfoundland and Labrador in tier 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And the important thing in this is that you must have 4 months of work permit left before you apply, and you must be between 21 and 59 years of age. And the important thing is that you must have the qualification, training, skills, or accreditation required to do the job. And so basically the way you can find that out is through the NOC code employment requirements. So those who are on postgraduate work permit are not eligible for this stream. But let's say if you have a spouse who's on an open work permit, it would be a great stream for them because in a way the requirements are pretty low. And as long as you are ready to make Newfoundland your home, this would be a great pathway for you. And no work experience per se is required. So I think it's a pretty good stream. Now let's talk about the Ontario International Student Stream. So this is again a great stream. It's a job offer stream which requires you to have a full-time permanent position from an eligible employer in a occupation with tier category 0, 1, 2, or 3. Another important thing about this stream is that it's an expression of interest stream, which means that there's no direct application. You have to first create your profile. And if you're invited, then you will submit your application. But the good part is there's no work experience required. And due to the recent changes in the processing of the application, so they have changed the process by which how the expression of interest is created and things like that. Because of that, now the processing is much faster, and the number of invitations which have been gone to this stream alone is one of the highest among all the other streams in Ontario. So this is a pretty good stream for students, for both Ontario students and students in general who have graduated from Canada. Now let's talk about the Manitoba Employment Career Pathway. So this is part of the international education stream. In this particular pathway, the requirements is that you must have graduated in the past 3 years from a DLI in Manitoba from a full-time program of at least 1 year or 2 semesters in length. So there are some language requirements, so CLB level 7, English or French. But the most important requirement is that you must also have a full-time job offer from an eligible employer from Manitoba in an in-demand occupation list. And that should be consistent with your completed program of study. So it's basically, it has to be relevant to your studies, and you must be working full time in Manitoba with a valid work permit at the time your application is assessed, and you must be residing in Manitoba at the time of the application. So the requirements are not that stringent. It's a great stream for those who have done their education from Manitoba. Saskatchewan student stream is another great stream for those who have graduated from a DLI in Saskatchewan in either a diploma, certificate, or a degree. So they must be on a postgraduate work permit or an open work permit under the Canada-Ukrainian authorization for emergency travel, and they must have worked for at least 6 months of paid employment in the Saskatchewan related to their field of study. And they have to have a full-time permanent job offer in their field of study from an approved Saskatchewan employer. So that could be in tier 0, 1, 2, or 3, or in a designated trade. So really good program. Even the language requirements are pretty low. For example, it is just CLB level 4 if your job offer is in tier 4 or 5. So again, a great program for those who graduated from Saskatchewan. I hope you found this video helpful and learned something new about the PR options in Canada. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit. And before we wrap up, I have got a little gift for you. As a thank you for watching the video till the very end, you can get 20% off on any virtual immigration consultation with me. And all you have to do is go to the website dilimmigration.com, and there is a link to book an appointment. When you go there, you book a virtual session, use the promo code DILPR20 when you book that consultation. More details are also in the description. You can check there. And I would love to personally help you map out the next steps towards your PR journey in Canada. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.